And thanks so much for making time, everybody, and specifically Corey, who is our Callbi demo guru. But Corey, why don't you just give us a quick 2 minutes overview, your background? You've been doing speech analytics for what, 20 years now, or data and speech analytics?
Sure. I've been doing data analytics for close on 25 years now. Our age catches up, but speech analytics more importantly for the last 10 to 12 years. And I'm still loving it. It's a wonderful journey in terms of the insights that our clients are getting.
Well, it's been a lot of fun working with you. I mean, those who don't know, I am an independent consultant, but I do work as a brand ambassador for Callbi. So since Callbi launched, 3 and a bit years ago, Corey and I have worked very closely together in this fascinating sector and seen not only the market develop, but also the product. So we have, about 120 deployments to date, Corey, something like that?
Yes, we do. That's in South Africa alone, and then internationally, we've got a number of sites in Australia and a couple of sites in New Zealand, in the UK.
Yeah. And it seems to be gathering more momentum. And it's just one of the points that Corey and I have been discussing before starting today is we're seeing a lot more interest coming in from the BPOs, not only those doing local BPO work, but international, using speech analytics now for a lot more for compliance, not only quality, but compliance and process enhancement. So, Corey, you've seen a lot of that happening and the changes. What's your impression of the way in which BPOs are now approaching using technology?
Rod, the challenge, I think, for every organization, in particular for BPOs, is that oversight, compliance, regulatory requirement. And in BPOs, the challenge is even more unique. They deal with clients in different geographies with different compliance and regulation requirements, with hefty fines. So, the old way of having an army of QA assessors listening to the calls it's inefficient, it's expensive. You've got to look at technology to automate the whole compliance listening component of it and then just flag the exceptions. And that's where speech analytics and Callbi in particular comes in useful is, you can automate the monitoring from a compliance perspective, regulatory, or from things like, treat the customer fairly, and POPIA in South Africa in particular. But to automate that so that it becomes a non-event, and the cost of automation using, low-cost solution like Callbi is a fraction of what it would do to hire people to sit and do the monitoring for you.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure, as we get into the session this morning, I'm going to ask you to demonstrate some of those features. But just as a quick kick-off credentials-wise, Callbi as a product and as a company within the AlphaWave Group, why don't you give us a quick overview of that?
So Callbi is part of a much larger group called the AlphaWave Group of Companies. As a group, we've been around 25 years. We're over 375 employees strong. But more importantly, as Callbi, and Rod touched on it, we've been deployed in over 120 contact centers in South Africa. So it's validated and proven the technology over the last 5 years. It works spectacularly well. And it is there to add massive value to our clients. So from a tech perspective, it's not just two guys in the van with a bit of software. We've done this sufficiently enough times to have proven and validated the technology over and over again.
And I think, we'll certainly be showing it in the demo in a few minutes' time, but that secret sauce of the South African vernacular languages, I mean, that's one of the things I've found really exciting working with contact centers, and seeing performance improvements and seeing employee engagement improvements, process improvements, all driven out of the vernacular. So this has been a lot of fun. And from your perspective, how has that been accepted by the South African contact center profession?
I think the reality is, Rod, our core, South Africa's unique nuance around languages, a call's never ever in one language. It's an absolutely essential requirement to be able to transcribe and then afterwards analyze across the vernacular languages. As Callbi, we support 5 South African languages, We're a South African company, so it's obviously built on South African data, but it's South African English, Afrikaans, isiZulu, Sesotho, and Setswana, and for our Kenyan clients, Swahili. And the reality is you can't just listen to a portion of the conversation. So if you've got a solution that only supports English, what do you do with your vernacular calls? And then in the BPO context, because we've got a unique capability to transcribe these mixed language calls as spoken, we've also developed an international English, South African English language model that transcribes both sides of the conversation more accurately. So you have a client with an American or a British accent, but you have a South African accented agent. Again, that presents challenges for a lot of the international, US-based technologies. Where with Callbi, we address that specifically for the BPO market, and that makes a big difference in terms of transcription accuracy for them.
Okay, let's start getting practical. Can you take us first into the use cases that we're seeing for Callbi Speech Analytics, and then taking those as the basis, let's go into actually showing our guests how this application actually works. So let's kick into use cases.
So for me, I classify use cases into 4 categories. The first category is Callbi is there to help our clients save costs and identify cost-saving opportunities. Examples of these would be things like silent time. We do that automatically. So there's 2 types of silent time we identify. In-call, which could normally be a training issue. The agent is looking for information while he's on the call. And then post-call silent time, which is normally an indication of abuse. The agent's holding onto the line, not allowing the dialer to push the next call through. So that is from an example of cost saving. And the thing I always say to our prospects is silent time is the handle time killer. We last year, we did a pilot at quite a big contact center. And by just reducing and almost eliminating post-call silent time, they were able to reduce handle times by 5%. 5% across 900 agents was a 7-digit win for them in terms of a telephone number. That pre-funded Callbi for the next 5 years. That one use case. Where we have sales organizations, Callbi is obviously there to help with the revenue generating component of it. So examples of that would be agents mentioning benefit statements, promotions, which agents are following the best known sales process. The challenge with sales contact centers is it's always outcomes focused. How many sales did you make? But they're not looking at, are you following the sales best practice to ensure consistent success over time, rather than, was it a successful sale or not? And with Callbi, you can monitor that process flow within the call. And typically a sales call would have an opening, an introduction, a benefit statement, and a close. So which agents are doing that and which components of that agents are leaving out? So it helps you with your overall revenue generating process and not just outcomes focused.
It's one of the areas I think that we've been doing quite a lot of work in is collections, which I quite often look at sales and collections in very similar vein, the same sort of thing. Now, you've had a lot of experience on the collection side of things on using speech analytics to drive preferred performance and processes.
Absolutely. For me, collections and sales are sort of sides of a coin, but specifically in the collections environment, it's that behavior. Is the agent asking for the strongest form of promise to pay? In other words, a debit order. Is the agent mentioning the benefit statements around why the client should be paying and what the benefit is of this, say, instant settlement discounts and things like that? So it's not just, you owe money, can you settle? But it's more around that conversation of what is happening in the conversation around there's a benefit to paying, you won't be blacklisted. Which agents are mentioning those? As I said, it becomes part of, are the agents consistently doing the right things to ensure long-term success rather than just, he collected or he didn't collect, but why didn't he collect? We don't analyze that. And that's where the benefit comes in, is to be able to understand what are the components that the good agents are doing and what are the components the weaker agents are leaving out.
Okay, Corey, I can see you chomping at the bit, ready to fire up your beast and show us the actual application. So over to you.
Perfect stuff. I'm going to stop my video. I'm going to share my Callbi screen. For the audience, this is my passion. I love doing it. Rod was saying to me on the chat inside, I'm hopping because I'm sort of rearing to go. But just confirm you can see my Callbi screen.
Yeah, confirmed.
Perfect stuff. So instead of going through the usual long demo, I want to cover some of the highlights around what Callbi does. So in essence, what Callbi does is it takes your chats, your emails, and your call recordings. And in the context of call recordings, we transcribe that, and then you can build queries to track specific use cases, behaviors, phrase mentions, to then derive value from it. As we mentioned, it could be things from a compliance perspective. It could be negative customer sentiment. It could be profanity, racial slur. You can track anything you want to. So with that tracking in mind, Callbi has three components. To me, I often refer to it as an operational insight tool for the contact center. So the three components that are used on a day-to-day basis is the dashboards. This is where you visualize the output of the queries, and you can track and trend behaviors over time. And that tracking and trending is a key concept because, let's say you use compliance, you pick up an agent with low compliance, you then have an intervention, you can then track, does that behavior change? Does that change stick across 100% of the calls, not just a sample? And the second component that is used on a day-to-day basis is what I call a convenience feature, but it is the playback portal, so that you can actually also listen to the call recording. But more importantly, we support something that I refer to as targeted listening. And targeted listening means that you can drop into the call at the exact point where something was said, either read or listen from that point onwards. This feature cannot be underestimated. If you, in some insurance industries, calls can be 45 minutes long. To listen to a 45-minute call to get to the point where the client is complaining about the services, it's inefficient, it's costly. So with that in mind, the ability to do targeted listening is an absolutely essential component, but also more importantly, a massive time saver and ultimately efficiency gain. And then lastly, the query engine. This is where you build the queries to drive through your use cases and to do the tracking and trending. Callbi was designed from day one for the contact center professional. So ease of use for us is key. We didn't design it for IT, for speech analysts, for data scientists. Callbi was built so that your QAs, your team leaders, your contact center managers can build their own dashboards, build their own queries, and it is simple and easy to do.
Corey, just before we go deeper into it, I think just if you could just touch on the fact that Callbi does not integrate into telephony systems, but we simply upload those calls. Why don't you just touch on that just so we give it some perspective?
So integration is a long term. So our vision is to build the world's best speech analytics platform, not the world's best integration platform. So every contact center has the ability to extract their call recordings and drop those into a folder. So using that native capability that you have, and then from that folder, staging folder, gets pushed across to Callbi. We've made it very simple and easy to do the data extraction. You can automate it from the telephony platform, and obviously it's automated from the Callbi upload process. Clients also have the ability to upload every 45 minutes, and within sort of 45 minutes of the upload being completed, the insights are available. But they can also upload intraday or end of day. That is entirely up to the client. And there is no cost impact to do the upload frequencies more frequently. But from an integration perspective, we took the route of least resistance to say we don't want to touch the telephony environment. We don't want to do hard integration. If the client decides to change the telephony platform that we've seen over the last 5 years, they just continue to upload the call recordings from the new platform. There is no replumbing to be done, and it's quite easy.
Excellent. Thanks, Corey. And I think just let me throw in there very quickly, the uploading is to an AWS instance. We either can provide it in Ireland, in South Africa, or in Sydney, Australia. So, and of course, it's got all the GDPR and POPIA security and data privacy and security issues involved. Okay, Corey, back to you. Let's get into the guts of this demo now.
Let's show off some of the features. One of the buzzwords of the moment currently is AI. I'm always smiling when I hear AI because this is the new silver bullet. For us, the approach around AI is how do we make Callbi more efficient? How do we drive through better insights using AI and make that whole user experience even easier? So I'm going to focus and show off some of the AI features, but we've been using AI for years to train our language models. Obviously, if you think about the nuances around region, accents in South Africa, and obviously the vernaculars, we've been using an AI solution we developed to do our language training. We have by far the most accurate language models for the South African languages we support, in part because we've got millions of hours of audio we've been utilizing, but we're also doing continuous language training. But let's start off with some of the AI features in terms of making it easier from a user experience. Remember, I said it is about building queries. But before we get to the queries, one of the new features we've rolled out is what we call QA Insights. And it's the ability to ask questions about a specific call. So if I look at this call, I can see the transcript. But instead of reading through the whole call, I can simply ask a question to say, what is this call about? The engine will then go and give me a summary of the call, and I can then start asking follow-on questions. And I often like to open it up when I do the demos to the audience because I get some of the best questions. But it is around being able to ask business-style questions about a call. So in other words, what was the call about? There you can see this call's about a discussion on an outstanding balance on a bank account with a customer arranging a payment plan and updating the customer's current status. I can also ask things like, what could the agent have done better? Okay, let's have a look and see what the answer to that one is. And I'm always amazed at this. It's not ChatGPT, but it is the same underlying style of technology. So we developed our own large language model utilizing South African contact center data that is now continuously being trained to be able to provide insights on it. So there we go. There's a great answer. The agent could have done better by being more empathetic and understanding towards the caller's financial situation. So that is one of the areas where we're looking at deploying artificial intelligence just to be able to get a better understanding about conversations, what the agent could have been done better rather than to have that just pure query approach. Rod, I don't know if you've got a question, or maybe when I open up to the floor, we can ask a sort of open-ended question, see if anyone has something they want to drop into the chat box. I can pop it into the insight here and let's see what it comes back with.
Come on, anybody got a question for Corey and Callbi? Give it a few seconds. Anybody there? Failing which, I think, Corey, let's just roll on with let's start looking at building those queries and then using the queries to identify those insights, which are the key to driving performance improvements and compliance.
So let's start off with the queries. I'm going to just show an example of query. I'm going to use my sentiment query, and then we'll drive it forward from there. Sorry, sentiment. So queries are built using keywords and phrases. I'm in the query engine. I can give my query a name, a long description. We can categorize queries, but it is what are the words and phrases to support a specific use case. In this case, it would be looking at high risk, so frustrated, harassment, anger, lawyer, ombudsman. So some of these obviously threatening legal action. So the way we view the customer experience is around three elements: profanity, vulgarity, as well as things like high risk and sentiment. So you can build queries to track high risk. In this example, the client's obviously threatening legal action or taking this further via social media, so I can identify calls using these word patterns. And you can put in any word pattern. I'm going to sue you. I'm going to speak to the regulator. I'm going to go to the constitutional court. Any of those words that might be relevant to your contact center. And the same thing with the other ones that I mentioned. So the process is simple: enter the keywords and phrases you're looking for. It'll then run against the calls, identify all of the calls that matched this. So in other words, these calls are high-risk calls, and then you can visualize those on the dashboard. If I click on any of the calls, I can see exactly where in the transcript, the query, etc. Remember, I mentioned that targeted listening being an efficiency gain and the time saver. It's available from within the query builder. interface, but also from a dashboarding perspective, where from a dashboard I can drill down into the underlying data points and to the exact point in the conversation where something was said. And these queries could be around things like compliance phrases, specific words, greetings. The sky's the limit in terms of what you want to do. But to make the query building process even easier for our clients is the second area where we're bringing in artificial intelligence. So with AI, instead of building out, as I've got an example here, keywords and phrases to support a specific script element, I can now enter the script sentence. So let me enter it. Welcome to the Callbi demo. I trust you are enjoying it. I can then ask it to go and generate the query for me to support that specific script sentence, and I can add additional script sentences to it. And then the query building process is as simple as eliminating some of the broad ones, and it's automatically built the query. The net result of using this query assistance using the AI engine is it makes query building 50% faster. Again, quicker time to value, again, easier for clients to build queries, but more importantly, it's just being able to now get better queries faster from a solution.
Corey, given the last 2 or 3 years working in the contact center industry with Callbi, your experience on working with QA analysts, and I think my little anecdote there is that when we started out, we started talking about speech analytics, in almost saying that it's going to replace QAs. That was a big mistake. So today we are positioning our QAs as, if you go through the training with Callbi and use Callbi, QAs become insights analysts. A young lady down in Cape Town that I went to visit, a site visit, she used a lovely expression. She said, when I was just a QA, sometimes my manager listened to what I have to say. Now that I'm an insights analyst, the boardroom listens to what I have to say. And I think there's the profound difference between tick box QA and really unearthing and surfacing insights that are business intelligence, that have profound impact on strategy and tactics. Back to you, Corey.
Rod, that's a fantastic, I love the example you've used it before, and every time I hear you say it, I smile. So Callbi is not there to replace your existing quality assessors. It's there to make them more efficient in 2 ways. Firstly, you get that, the nirvana, which is 100% coverage. But secondly, it changes the focus from being random sample tick box based to exception based. And that's where the insights come in. And why are these calls failing the checks? What are the agents doing differently? How can we coach the agents to fall in line and be more compliant, or be more successful from a sales perspective, or follow the sales process better? It is being able to have those insights that are across 100% of the calls, but more importantly, it is being able to have it as evidence-based. We're starting to see with clients as they mature with their Callbi journey, they actually start using Callbi measures as KPI measures. So in the old days, KPIs were typically average handle time, outcome. What was the outcome of the call? Now we start seeing behavioral KPIs with, what is your compliance ratio across all of the calls? Are you consistently following the sales process rather than worrying about the outcome? You get them to do the right thing consistently, the outcomes will automatically follow. So we see that change in the way the contact center is being managed, being from a sort of reactive to a more proactive monitoring, coaching, guiding, and then those insights feed into things like marketing. How many customers are complaining about pricing? Is it specific to products, so we can quantify that again, as well as things like, from a legal and compliance perspective, how strong is our compliance adherence, and specifically in the BPO market, they've got to start giving guarantees that they've got compliance ratios of over 90%. How do you do that without using speech analytics to monitor, guide, and train the agents, but also to provide quantifiable, evidence-based proof to their clients that they are adhering to the measures being measured?
Corey, won't you move us into some of the reporting? I find that fascinating because that's where where the rubber meets the road. And if you can take us through from reporting into the one which I really enjoy, which is the automated QA and scorecards, because that really takes a huge leap forward in terms of monitoring, managing, and using QA effectively.
Perfect. I've also see there's a question on the chat line around Callbi can be referenced from a call guide and call flow guide we're using in our call center. We're asking questions using the AI. When are you asking questions using the AI? So the AI questions specifically around the new module with the QA insights. At the moment, it's version 1. It's there to ask specific questions about the call. In time, that'll be rolled out to look at a cross call. So for this agent, what could they have done better? Give me examples of what they haven't done well, so that we can drive it forward. But I'm in the dashboarding section. If you want to follow up on the question, or if I didn't answer it properly, just drop a chat in.
Jump in there as well. One of the things I've seen and used practically is taking a call guide, taking a paragraph, a sentence, or even half the call guide, and literally doing a cut and paste into the AI query generator. And there it is. You've got literally 100 lines of queries, which really analyzes everything in the call guide. Did the agent say it? Did they not say it? So I think that is it's a practical question, and that's the answer is, yes, we can use call guides as the basis for using the AI query generator. Back to you, Corey.
Perfect stuff. So let me go and build up. Remember, I mentioned ease of use. So I'm just going to do this as my webinar build. There's a number of visualizations we support. The first 2 call lists and word clouds are what I call high-level overview visualizations. The next 2 bar and line graphs are what I call granular daily visualizations, and the almighty scorecard. I'm just going to build 2 so you can see how it works. Let's start with the call list. It's going to ask me how do I want to group it. And as part of the import, you can create a hierarchy. So an agent could roll into a team could roll into a contact center, or it could roll into an organization. But let's just go and create a team's call list, and there I can see my 3 teams that I have looking at the period. I can customize this as simply as clicking on the filter icon and say now I can customize by anything. Let me customize on date range, and I want to customize on a query. I'm going to say I've got a query that tracks the word problems. So I'm going to say I want to create that for the problem calls. And now I can look at team for an enhanced period. I can see by team the number of calls that have, and the number of calls that have problem mentions in them. In this format, it's a really quick way to identify team B seems to have an issue. 100% of their calls have problems in it. Maybe there's an issue within team B. Again, if I click on the data point, it's going to take me to the underlying calls. If I click on any of the calls, it's going to take me to the exact point in the conversation where the problem or problems query it hit. I can then read or investigate from these points onwards. So it is that simple to create the visualizations, but you can also on the fly change the granularity. So here I'm looking at it on a team level, but if I wanted to edit the card and look at it on an agent level, I can quickly change that, and I can immediately see which agents are driving this behavior and which agents are the ones that are spiking. I can see James, 100% of these calls are problem calls. Scrolling down, I can see Terrell also has 100% of these calls are problem calls. So I can quickly immediately identify where the problem lies within either a team or within an agent to go and investigate from a coaching perspective. Rod mentioned scorecards, so let's go and there are just some other examples of visualizations while I'm here. Bar and line graphs are daily tracking visualizations. So here I'm tracking the same view, looking at problem calls, but looking at it on a daily basis. And here I'm looking at non-compliant calls, and I can see one agent and how their behavior tracks over time. Same thing with things like app mention or silent time. And you can customize these cards in innumerable ways, and thereby tracking, there's an unlimited amount of the options available. The second one is word clouds are a really useful high-level view to say, are there any words that are popping out that you're not expecting to see in the conversation? I used to use the the voicemail example quite a lot, but recently I bumped into hello, sweetheart, hello, darling. So when words like sweetheart, darling, and love pop into the conversation, you're going to want to investigate as to why are the agents calling the clients love, darling, and sweetheart, and that turns out to be personal calls. So again, it's a really nice overview of, what were the dominant words in the conversation? Are any of them of interest to go and investigate? But let's go and create the scorecard.
Just while we're on that word, Claude, I think, a lot of the questions that come up is, where do we find and how do we find ROI on an investment like Callbi, which is not significant. But your case study of where you picked up the post box in the word cloud down in Durban, that was a fascinating case study and also a massive return. Won't you just
with pleasure. There's actually two like that, but the postbox one was really interesting. It's one of our very first deployments 5 years ago. They're a virtual mobile network operator. They deliver cell phones to doors. And in the very first word cloud in training, the word postbox popped up. It was, we thought nothing of it. The client got very excited. And it turns out they retired the postbox script 2 years ago. And they were hoping they were expecting all of the agents are using the new script. By not asking for the postbox details, they worked out they saved 45 seconds of handle time per call. The reality was that 30% of their 300 agents were still using the old postbox script. That was an enormous benefit to them to save 45 seconds on 30% of their calls every day. If you start working up the ROI, that was well into the hundreds of thousands, if not millions, if you extrapolate over a 2-3 year period. Great nudge. Thanks, Rod. I'd forgotten about that one.
There's just a nice question come in about how do we differentiate between speakers, the caller and the customer? Why don't you just quickly just show that?
I love the question. So there's two ways to do it. Clients can upload in stereo if you are recording in stereo, and then diarization or speaker separation is 100% accurate. However, the reality is a lot of contact centers are doing mono recording from a space and a cost perspective. And the Callbi has done a lot of work over the last 4 years to be able to do mono speaker separation to a highly accurate degree. Currently, our mono speaker separation is 90% plus accurate, which makes it, directional queries. I can ask queries of did the agent or did the client say something a lot more feasible. So whether you're doing stereo or mono, it makes no difference. We can do the diarization and it's highly accurate.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Corey. Then from dashboards into scorecards. This is the exciting stuff. And
perfect. So there's another one. How do we differentiate phrases picked up from customers and agents? So you can build, David, you can build directional queries. So I can say, did the agent say this or did the customer say this? Just to show that as an example, I'm just going to drop into my text-based queries. I'm just going to use that problem query I showed earlier. And in this example, I can say, was the word problem said by anyone, by the agent or the client? So I can specify for any of the words which of the speakers had said it. So you can build directional queries, which is quite useful, specifically when it comes to things like compliance phrases. But back to the scorecards, let's go and create a sample scorecard. I'm just going to build it out from scratch. I'm going to call this my webinar. Again, I can choose the grouping. I can also change the grouping on the fly. Remember, I had a team, but let's start off with an agent one. And the way scorecards are built is you add the queries that you built for this particular scorecard. So if it's a QA scorecard, you would have QA style queries. If it's a compliance scorecard, you would have compliance style queries. But I'm just going to add a couple of measures into this. And there I can see the queries that are going to drive this particular scorecard. I can also specify that it match or not match any of these. If you are using weightings in the contact center, you can add the weightings here. And specifically from a compliance perspective, we support the concept of a critical fail or an auto fail. So if it fails this one, it doesn't average the score. It'll zero the score for this particular call. But let's go and save my, I'm going to call this the 27th. Save my data set for my scorecard, and let's go and visualize it on the dashboard. So I'm going to create, by now everyone on the demo should be able to build these because they're so easy to do. I want a scorecard. It's going to ask me which demo set I want to use. There's my webinar demo set. I'm going to add it. And there it's gone to create my scorecard. I can again filter the scorecard on a couple of things. I can change the date ranges. I've got quite an old data set, so I'm going to push my date range back to 2019. And then I can get a view per agent. Let's quickly load. For each of the measures, I'm tracking how the agents have done. So I can see for the period I'm looking at, the agents, the number of calls, their overall compliance score. And for each of the areas, I'm tracking how the agents have done. This granular view on which agents are struggling with what is absolutely invaluable in the contact center, because it changes the coaching and the interventions from this generic one size fits all to a more agent focus. I can see exactly which agents are struggling with what to what extent. So I know exactly where to focus my intervention based on the data. So I can just use this as an example. I can see this agent is 75% correct there, 75 and 0 there. So I'll focus the intervention on that. And the numbers are different for each agent. So you can see exactly where the agents are struggling, and then they're tracking and trending over time. One of the questions I often get is, what can we do with the data? These scorecards can be extracted into Excel, and they are beautifully formatted that you can then use for downstream coaching and intervention sessions. So I'm just going to give an example. I'm going to just reshare my screen. I'm going to open up my Excel screen, and there's an example of a Callbi scorecard that has been dropped into Excel. You can see the formatting, and then I can track and use this for my coaching. What you do lose in Excel is obviously that being able to drill down into the underlying calls. But from a reporting coaching perspective, the ability to what we call report packs is absolutely essential, because it makes getting the data out of Callbi so much easier for use in your downstream, either environments, downstream reporting, or any of the other reporting requirements that you might
have. Okay. I think, Corey, you've answered David's question about exporting the data and how that is used downstream. Over to you, Corey. Anything else that you'd like to highlight?
Perfect. There are a couple of other things to highlight. Is, one of the questions that often get is, do we support role-based, persona-based, team-based dashboards? And absolutely within Callbi. So I'm just going to give you an example. I've got a number of demo environments that I work with. So you see me switch environments. But here I've got what I call my default dashboard that is just tracking overall trends within the contact center. But I can have area, function, role specific dashboards. So in this collections example, from the collections manager, this would be the dashboard that I monitor the behavior coming off the floor that is relevant to my job function. And you can have dashboards for the compliance, for the sales, for the marketing guys. So we built Callbi to be flexible in that regard, to say, it's not one size fits all. I can have these various dashboards to track various elements and then visualize those for the specific areas within the contact center so that they get the insights that are relevant to them. Any other questions? I'm monitoring the chat as well. My suggestion always is, in these generic demonstrations like we've done today, is more around, it's more around getting a feel for what it is. I obviously will do on a one-to-one basis for each organization a more detailed overview demonstration where we can look at what are your specific use cases, and we give you demonstrations and examples around those, because I do an unstructured demonstration. So from my side, I'm there to make sure that we walk this journey with you to ensure that you get make an informed decision around how does it work for you.
Corey, you see a question there from David about POCs. And maybe without giving away the trade secrets, why don't you just touch on the sort of costing models and the methodologies that's used by Callbi for licensing? I think one of the important things is the difference between agent licensing and the fact that managers, QAs, etc., have free access to the tool.
Perfect stuff. So let's chat around this. I'm going to, David, for you, I'm going to swap it back to front. So our costing model We don't charge for supervisor view QA licenses. Our model is based on unique agents being uploaded, and it's a monthly fee. Rather often used to use the analogy, it costs less than a sort of a Big Mac meal with the drinks and chips to have Callbi license per agent. So it is a very small amount of money. We are a South African company, so our cost base is rand based. And then there's an initial once-off setup and training fee. But more importantly, from a POC perspective, the value you get from Callbi is that tracking and trending over time. And obviously, there's a lead time to training your team up how to build these queries and then derive the value from it. So we do what we call a paid for pilot. So you can bring on a subsection of your contact center, 30 agents. Let's say you've got a contact center, 300 agents. Bring on the first 30 agents. We'll train you up. You only pay for those. It's a month-to-month license. After 2 or 3 months, if you decide this is not working, you can terminate it. But there's a far better value realization in enabling you to build your own queries to track your specific use cases, where POC is just going to show you we can do what we say, and that's keyword tracking and trending, but the value realization happens for each client. So instead of doing POCs, we do pilots. We enable you. It is paid for, but for less than 20,000 Rand, you can do a full pilot for 30 agents over a 3-month period, and you can drive through those insights for yourself.
Sorry, David has raised his hand. I'm going to bring you in live, David. So if you just unmute yourself, and you have our full and undivided attention.
Hear me, guys?
There we go.
Hi, David.
All right, cool. Thank you. I had another follow-up question, but you did answer that. Say it's for about less than 30,000 Rand. We can pilot 30 agents. Just my last question, or questions rather, is maybe how do we then set up some time or reach out, contact details, so that I can speak to my line manager and relevant stakeholders for a more individualized demonstration, and then take it from there.
Now, happily do that. I'll liaise with you. I'll send you a matrix of available demo times and dates. We'll set that up on a personal basis. Also send you, we have a lot of literature. I've written, I think, 4 ebooks about speech analytics over the last couple of years, all on use cases and how to optimize the technology. So we'd love to engage with you, set up a private session for you, and we can talk commercials. Corey, just while we're all together on this one, why don't you just touch on the training process, because that's quite an important issue.
And absolutely, and because one of the nuances of our business model is we have a month-to-month license with each client. We don't want to sign them up for 12 months. The onus is on us to make sure you get value. If you don't get value, why continue using Callbi? So with that in mind, our training has been focused around being able to guide your, what we call insight analysts, in getting the most value out of Callbi. So that implies a couple of things. We have a very sort of modern learning management platform to get familiar with what is Callbi and how does it work. And then our customer success enablement advisors work with them in person being virtual, in person, over the course of 3 to 6 months, to ensure that the queries are working, they're getting value from it. If they're stuck, we are there to help them. Because remember, termination for us is 30 days away. So we've got to always make sure that our clients are using it and they're getting value from it. But that benefit to the client means that you are constantly have somebody to reach out to. If you're not sure about something, want to know something, then we are there to help. And we've walked this journey with some of our clients for the last almost 6 years now. From day one, we are there to make sure you get the best value and return on your investment from Callbi. Otherwise, why continue to do the renewal every month?
I think it's one of our points. We obsessed with ROI, and so much so that before we go live with a new client, we spend a lot of time defining the ultimate objectives of the exercise. What do we want to achieve? Is it shortened AHT? Is it better processes? Is it revenue increase? Is it collection increases? Whatever we set those as goals and targets, we walk that walk with you all the way down. Way past the point where we want to see, yes, there's a very definite ROI And therefore, that's our long-term sustainability and our relationship with the clients and our users. Back to you, Corey.
Sure. Thank you so much, Jens.
Perfect.
Just last question before you go, Corey.
Take your time, David.
Thank you. Is the system only integratable with AWS? Because I know we use the system for outbound.
So from your perspective, as long as you've got the ability to extract your call recordings and push that across to Callbi, that is the only integration we worry about. The fact that we are hosted on AWS from our perspective is merely that is where our hosting platform is, but it in no ways impacts you as a client where it is hosted.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Corey and Rod.
Great. Eleanor, naturally, any questions from your side? Anything you'd specifically like to see? I see you came in a little bit late, but as I mentioned in the chat, I'll be putting the edited version of this up onto our YouTube channel later today, so you'll be able to review it from the beginning. Any questions, anybody else? No, I think then, Corey, from our side, thank you so much for making time and wishing everybody a safe and happy long weekend. Oh, here's David back. Have you got another question for us?
Yes.
David,
but
I think great. I'm enjoying your questions, so go for it.
Yeah, I think maybe it will also be something that we can pick up when we've obviously set up some time for a more personalized demo. But for me, it's also more interesting to know, or maybe insights in terms of the percentage of calls or the range of calls that you'd cover. I understand that the system will cover 100%, but more insights in terms of how do I or my QA analyst or QA team, what's the best approach or the framework, how many calls do we assess, what's the sample size and so forth. So maybe it's something that we can cover in our
lovely question.
That's a great question. But just to touch on it, it's no longer about samples, it's about 100% coverage. So the focus moves away from sampling to exception. So your QAs will then look at which calls failed the checks that you have. So let's use compliance as an example. And why are those calls failing? What are the agents doing? And how do you coach those agents? So it fundamentally changes that approach, not to look at random sampling, but to look at, what are the calls failing our checks, and how do we then correct that behavior from an agent perspective?
Great stuff. Thanks for that question and answer, Corey. Eleanor's with us and she's got her hand up. So Eleanor, I'm bringing you.
Hi.
You are live. Eleanor, you're muted. Are you there?
Eleanor, I think you're muted. If you can just unmute, we can. I don't know if I can unmute it from. There we go with me.
Got you. Yes, we got you. Go for it, Eleanor.
Good morning, gentlemen. Okay, I just have one quick question. I'm sorry I joined in a bit late. Okay, so with regards to Callbi, I just want to find out, is this when it comes to training, it's a question on when we're talking about training, do we need to train the agents on this, or just for the QA analysts as well as the team leaders and the managers?
It's a fantastic question. Callbi is an operational insight tool, as I refer to it. So it is there for your QA analysts, for your team leaders, and your contact center managers. So those are the people we train up to then use the system. Typically, that what we call internally as our nickname, the Callbi champions, are the ones using Callbi to build the queries in the dashboards, and then your QAs and your team leaders would then use it to manage the team. So that is the audience for it. It's not designed for the agents to then drive through behaviors.
I think, though, on a point that Eleanor, you raise a very good point there. There's a very important component of change management necessary when you start deploying speech analytics, because Big Brother is watching, listening to every single call. And we've found on literally every site we've deployed on you get a significant upturn in performance, in compliance, purely because the agents know that every single call is being monitored. But it's important to implement that change management. Natalie, I see your note there. I'll reach out to you and connect directly, and let's have that that one-on-one chat and set up a specific discussion and or a focused demo. Does that answer your question, Eleanor?
It does. Thank you very much.
Great stuff.
Fantastic. That was a great question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Just checking the chat lines there. And I think that's it. So to everybody who's taken the time and trouble to spend time with us this morning, thank you. I hope you got value from it. And great questions coming in. David, I think if there was a prize for good questions, you'd be the winner today. And Corey, thanks so much for your time and your insights and your sharing your experience. So from my side, wishing everybody that safe and happy long weekend coming up, and onwards and upwards. Corey.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone.